Welcome to Yin, and my name is Jennifer Elliott, if we hadn't met. So today we're going to do Yin for the spine and torso, so sort of working through the side body, through the front body, moving through the chest. So that will be our experience today. So again, I'm Jennifer Elliott, and this is Yin for the heart and spine. Okay, let's begin. So I'm going to start in a 2-block heart opener. If you don't have 2 blocks, we're going to do a lot of different variations on the heart opener today using bolsters, blankets, whatever you have. So I'm going to start with a 2-block heart opener. And if you don't have that, just makeshift this however it works for you. And we'll get started. I have a timer on my phone, so this will kind of give us our time limits. I'll just be here 3 minutes, not long, because we have plenty of these twists and heart openers rather that we're going to be doing. All right, so get yourself set up into your first heart opener, this 2-block heart opener or whatever you've decided to do. Just take a moment to let the bottom tips of the shoulder blades press up towards the chest. The arms by the sides, palms up. And I just have the knees bent today. That feels really nice in my lower back. You could explore butterfly legs or even straight. Allow the jaw to unhinge and the eyes to soften. And so it's nice if you can just scan the body here. So just start from head to toe. Observe how you're feeling in the body. Some of you may have already done a practice, so you might have already noticed that. It's a little bit easier for you. You might find more quickly what's happening within. If you've had a long day or you've just arrived on your mat, it may take you a little bit of time. It may not be the next few moments. It may take you all practice to really scan the body and become aware of what's happening within. And so we'll start with the breath. Let's take a nice full inhale through the nose. Open the mouth and let it out. And again, in through the nose. Open the mouth and let it out. In through the nose. Hold the breath at the top. Sip a bit more breath in through the nose. Sip a bit more breath in. Open the mouth and let it out. Then take an inhale through the nose and an exhale back out. And just allow your breath to start to find its own pattern now. Some of you may have essential oils at home. I tend to put a little bit of essential oil behind my ears before I start. So when I take those nice big breaths, I really breathe in that relaxing, calming oil. And so you might use something similar if those are things you have around. All right, we're here less than 5 breaths. Okay, so go ahead and take your arms overhead, reach them behind you. Do what you'd like. You can interlace fingers, turn the palms open, maybe invite in a good yawn. Bring the arms back overhead, change the interlace, reach the hands back behind you again. Maybe you yawn again. All right, and then relax here. We're gently going to shift over onto our left side. So you can press yourself up onto your left elbow. I'm just going to move my blocks out of my way. And then I'm going to lie all the way down onto my left side. So just lying on the left, fetal position. Pull the knees in towards the chest. And just since it's here for a moment, I'm going to use my block as a nice pillow. So we're going to try to stay pretty much in this fetal position on this side. Take your right arm high. You can move that left shoulder out from underneath you. And then just start to drape the arm over. Now I've run into a wall. I don't have enough space, so I'm going to move over a little bit. You might find the same issue. And this bottom arm can be in cactus. It can be straight, whatever works for you. So that top arm is up again. Drape it over to the right. And I'm actually going to keep it resting on this bolster because I like this little bit of a lift for a moment. So I'm going to do that. I'll eventually move that bolster out from underneath me, so maybe the arm gets a little lower. We're going to be here or in any version of your twist for that same 3 minutes. All right. So if yin is new to you, or at least I'm new to you, I use a timer, and that just gives us an equal amount of time on both sides. And for me, it always just feels like, especially when I set the timer, you know that I'm not just going to ramble on and on. You know, there's an end point. And it also creates a sense of safety. You know there's sort of this time frame that we're in. And then just notice how you adjust through that time. In the first few breaths, you might adjust. You might see what's comfortable for you. So for me now, I'm sort of dropping that arm. I'm deciding to stay with cactus versus straight arms. And I'm really pulling those knees up to the chest. So I've done my fidgeting now. Now I'm committing to my pose. So I'm committing to this shape. If you have low back concerns, you might slide a blanket in between the thighs. And as I commit to stillness, I animate the pose with the breath. So even though I'm committed to the stillness, the breath does move the body. So as I take nice, relaxing breaths, I can feel the heart rising, the shoulder descending. And you might even notice how the breath starts to deepen the experience, how it stretches those tissues just a little bit more. You can even take that left hand, rest it on your top knee, whatever's the most comfortable. Now for me, I've decided to keep my head neutral, so I'm just sort of looking at the ceiling. You might explore. You can look left, which is a nice stretch on the neck. You can look right, which is slightly more traditional in our twists. About a minute left. And just really let the gravity take over. So even though I'm animating the body with the breath, the inhale is rising up through the chest. If I really let myself go on exhale, I feel this sinking, this melting into the earth. And it's through that gravity that we get deeper. What I notice personally for myself, you may or may not notice it as well, is that the release that I'm trying to find in the shoulder, the upper back, it's really my own. So I notice at the base of the exhale, there's almost a gripping and unconscious holding. There we go, let's come to center. And so we'll see if that gripping is on the second side. So take a moment, just come to center. Pause for a moment, you might feel some warmth along the spine. And then we're going to roll to the right side. We'll do that on the other side. So roll to the right. You can set yourself up like I did earlier, having something underneath your head. I was deciding to stay in my cactus arms. Knees come high to the chest. All right. Take the left arm high, move that right shoulder blade out from underneath you. And then take the left arm, move it out to the side. Now, I was resting on a prop before, but the prop's not there for me, so I'm just going to let my arm hover for a moment. We start the timer, so we're not here longer than we need. But because we're completely lying on that right side, my left arm is going to be a little bit elevated. And I'm using that for a few breaths just to sort of create a little bit more traction here with my gravity. Let the breath just release a little bit deeper into the pose. You're watching the hand. It may look like I'm physically letting it lift and fall, but I'm just letting the breath take it. So as I inhale, it naturally lifts the arm, and as I exhale, it might drop a little deeper. So if you made any other changes, for me, I ended up coming off that prop and finding cactus arms. About 2 minutes left. Most of us have a twist that feels slightly more successful than the other. You may not notice it here. I notice it a lot in standing twists like revolved triangle. One side twists really well, and the other side feels like there's not a lot of movement. Most of us have this. We're very asymmetrical. One side is sort of always in the front lines. The other side of the body is more sort of observing, watching, waiting. And so our yin is trying to bring some balance to the two sides. We're no longer a right, a left, a masculine, a feminine, but we're a whole body, a whole person, finding that perfect combination of the two. I took my cover off my phone. Now it just wants to slide out of my hands all the time. I'm always afraid I'm going to drop it. All right, we have 40 seconds left. Keep those knees pretty high to the chest. Again, twisting is for the thoracic spine, which really just means any part of your spine that is attached to a rib. And so the ribs, they're going to end at the back, the sort of low back, not all the way low, but sort of right where you can feel those ribs descending, and at the shoulders. So we're not trying to twist our lower back. We're not necessarily trying to twist our neck, unless you've decided to look one direction or the other. All right, come to center and just pause for a moment. So these rebound moments are important. You sort of let the body resettle. We're sort of vacuuming or imbibing in moisture. So as we push and pull and then rest, we bring that moisture into the tissues. So you might feel that for a moment. Okay, so we're going to continue with our heart opener where we are. I'm going to use a blanket and a bolster and maybe a block. If you don't have a bolster, and honestly my bolster is a little thick, so I might normally just do like a folded blanket. So just grab whatever you have available. And I'm going to have my block behind me just in case I want it. I'm going to undo my blanket. My hips are going to go on that. Okay, I'll show you and then you can kind of figure out your setup. So I have my hips on my blanket already. One, because it's just nice to have padding, and the more height you have here, the less this bolster feels high. And my bolster is already a little thick, so I think a little less traction on the lower back will be good for me. So I'm going to find this place where my heart is open. I'm going to scooch back enough that my arms start to drape off the back side of the bolster. Now my shoulders aren't going to make it to the ground. I can place my head on this block or pillow, whatever you have available. For me, I usually start with it and then I decide I'm kind of over it. And then you can take those arms into cactus or straight, whatever works for you, but it's that same sort of opening of the chest again. So take a few moments to get set here. If you feel this in your lower back, you may need to lift your hips up higher and put another prop underneath. Or you may need to lower your prop down if it's something like a couple of blankets. So our goal is to open up the front of the chest, but not to feel this as discomfort in the lower back. And that's why my knees are bent. You can explore straight legs or butterfly. Those are fine. But for me, my back really likes those bent knees. So now that hopefully you found your space, I'll go ahead and set our timer. We're just staying with this number 3. 3 minutes. And what I also like about staying consistent with numbers for a while is how do they feel? How does 3 minutes here feel more intense or less intense than 3 minutes in your twist. It's a slippery phone, that one. All right. So find your space. Couple of breaths. The main thing, whether you have this prop under your head or not, is not to let your chin tip up or to have your head hanging in a way that's super uncomfortable. So really find a way, like for me, if I remove my prop, I just need to scooch back a little bit. But honestly, that's a bit much on my neck. So I'm going to go back to having the block underneath. So everyone's different. Everyone's props are different. So just start to investigate what makes sense for you. I really like these heart openers. We're helping to stretch not only the muscles across the chest that we might know about, like the pecs, but we're also stretching those muscles that go in between the ribs, individual ribs, those intercostal muscles. And honestly, we're getting into the tissues that are even deeper than that, those connective tissues that surround the muscles. And what's the benefit of being able to create space in those muscles between the ribs? If the ribs can move more easily, we can get more breath into the lungs. And heart opening generally is uplifting. It begins to uplift your mood. So even if that's not how you started, and even if you don't feel super uplifted at the moment, it's a little bit like fake it till you make it. Even just creating that space is allowing your body to feel open. Palms open is a nice gesture of being open to receive. And our ability to breathe is just really our ability to receive. If we're constricted, if we're closed off, if we're not allowing, it's very hard to get that breath in. Okay, so we're going to keep our setup pretty much the way it is. Depending on how you liked it, you may need to make little adjustments, but we're going to roll to the left side, similarly to what we did in our first twist. So my left arm is in between, and we'll see, this is a little extreme for me, this bolster, but I'm going to keep it for now. I think I can work with it. And I'm just taking this arm in between the bolster or whatever your blanket setup might be, and I've got something underneath my head. And this can be it. Or take that top arm over, and we're really getting into the side body. So a nice side body stretch. So if this whole setup is not for you, it's not for your hips, your back, you don't have the right props, your alternative pose is banana asana. It's exactly how it sounds, so I'll just demo that quick before we move into everything. So you would just take your feet off to one side, cross at the ankles, scooch your upper body to the same side, grab elbows or hands, and just stretch the side body that way. So banana asana, if the side angle pose is not for you. Okay, so timer is going, whichever one you've decided. Okay. Really listen within. So some uncomfortability is okay, but you have to discern what is a good sensation, a bad sensation. And so don't just stay somewhere because you think you should. Find a place that you can, again, fidget, adjust, and then commit to the shape. Use your breath to animate and create space. So when we think about the breath or we think about the lungs, oftentimes I find that we may just think of the front body, so the chest, the sternum, the breastbone area, but the ribs go all the way around and your lungs expand this whole thoracic cavity. So even here, we're breathing into the side ribs. We're trying to create that same space. You can breathe into the back ribs. So allow yourself to be open to receive even here. And for me, pulling the knees up quite close into that fetal position is comfortable. You might decide you want an extra blanket or prop between the knees, and that's fine too. About a minute left. And then close the eyes. And then as you move within, can you explore each individual rib in that space in between? And see if you can do this with your mind's eye, so just exploring. Are there any parts of your ribs that don't feel like they're moving? What makes them rigid or limited? Okay. So what I really like about this setup is we can just come back to where we were a moment ago. So you can make your way onto your back if you're doing the side angle pose. If you're in banana asana, then just come to a Shavasana for a moment. And then make your way onto your other side. So either banana asana or shifting to your right. Start the timer. And again, find something that you can commit to. And once you've found it, take 5 or 6 breaths to fidget and adjust. And since I have this other block behind me, putting my hand on it just makes it nice to sort of rest. And on side one, after a couple of breaths, I actually removed that. Consider closing your eyes on this side. And just finding that experience again. How is it different? Is it the same? About 90 seconds left. For many of us, we may sleep like this. And so this may start to already induce that parasympathetic nervous response, that rest and digest. Your body is familiar with this, and whenever you're in this pose, you're going to sleep or you're sleeping, So it's just a nice way to already tell your body to relax. We've got 5 breaths left. All right. Come back to your center, whatever that is, whether it's on your back or it's Shavasana. Take a moment just to feel left and right, how they combined into one whole person. Okay, so we're going to continue this, but we're going to flip it. So we're going to roll onto our bellies. And I'm actually going to keep my props as I have them. I'm going to keep a blanket under my belly. I'm eventually going to use this bolster, but I'm going to slide it forward for right now so that I'm in Sphinx. I'm actually going to move my blanket back just a tad. So I don't have it too thick. You could make this blanket thicker. This just gives the lower belly and the lower back a little bit of support, especially if you have low back sensitivities. It may be real nice to have a blanket or a pillow or something underneath your belly. I do this a lot too when I used to get massages, when we used to be able to do that. So find your way into Sphinx. Have something in front of you, like a bolster, a blanket, a block, whatever's available. We're going to do Sphinx, but we're going to change it. So just get yourself set up first. And you can always flip things. So everything is about what is your target area. So we're now starting to get in the front of the spine, lifting through the heart. But we're also getting into the lower back. So we work either through tension or compression. So in this case, the lower back has a little bit of compression, healthy compression, right? Unless you have low back disc herniations or you know this is unsafe for you, then you can flip it and take something else. Okay, so let's stick with our 3 minutes. I'm happy with that number today. And we're going to come back to the Sphinx. So what I'd like you to do, if it's available, is just cross at the elbows to what we call crushed wings. And this may be plenty. You're sort of still in your Sphinx, you're crossing at the elbows, or you might walk the hands a little further across. Now you can stay here. What I like about the bolster or prop, you can rest your forehead if you'd like. Or if that feels extreme, you just bring yourself right back up. The 3 minutes with the upper body or with larger muscle groups may not seem that intense. For me, this always seems to get a little intense, especially with my right shoulder. So again, if it feels uncomfortable, a little bit of being uncomfortable is fine. But if what you feel is pins and needles, things falling asleep, anything that feels like a nerve, sharp pain, shooting pain, then you want to back off. You can just go back to Sphinx. We're already halfway through, so no big deal, right? Well, it's nice if you're able to rest your forehead. Again, it teaches your body to relax, rest and digest. Continue to let the breath animate the posture. We have about 6 breaths left. So in a moment when the timer goes off, notice which arm you have in front, just so that you are sure to do the second side. But back out and take a rebound. So you can take that Sphinx. I'm going to throw my hair up because it's a little difficult. So just take a rebound. And already I can feel my right shoulder so much warmer than the left. Circulation, hydration moving into that area. Okay, side two. All right, so switching. Cross at the elbows or whatever you were doing. We're sticking with that 3 minutes to stay consistent. So this is interesting. I've switched my arms, but I still feel it in that right shoulder. And so even if you have switched sides and your experience is still the same side, that's fine. That's my right side. It's on the front lines. It's the worker bee. And so I would expect it may have a few more knots to work out. And you can be upright or rest the forehead. Kind of like a reverse eye pillow here. About halfway through our pose. See if you can count your breaths. So as we're approaching a minute here, we'll call it 10 breaths, 10 even breaths. And the way I would count 10 is inhale is 1, exhale is also 1. Let's see, we have 1 minute left. All right, we got to about 8.5 breaths. What about you? So slowly back out. Notice the warmth here. Take a moment. And we have one more pose in this orientation. So I've got my bolster in front of me. I'm just going to show you first, and then you can make decisions for what you need to do. So you can stay in Sphinx. If Sphinx is too high on your lower back, you're already kind of over this, then just go lower. You can take this much lower. It's relative to you, so don't worry about sort of bigger is better. For you, it might be backing off some. As you get into Sphinx, you can stay as you are. You can also eventually lift it up onto a prop, like a bolster, blankets, or bolster. And this gets more into the lower back, that compression, and the front body. And then what I like about having this bolster, I like to shift it way back. And then eventually I might lift more into a seal. So arms go wide, just like a seal sounds. Turn those palms out and you can lift. And this gets more into the front spine and lower back. So any of those variations are fine. You might start with one and move towards the other. But we're going to be here for 3 minutes, so that may help you to decide. Staying with that number just a little bit longer. Get yourself set up. Timer is going. I think I'm actually going to go right into Sphinx on my prop. And for me, it's super important to have that blanket under the lower back. Sometimes my low back gives me trouble. And so I'm real conscious if I don't feel that it's the right day to go a little higher in my pose, I don't do it. And how do I know? I just sort of listen within, that little voice that says, I don't know, maybe not today. Listen to that voice. It's literally got your back. Your gaze is up to you. I generally tend to look a little forward or down just to release my neck. And we're approaching halfway, so decide for you. Did you go too deep, too fast? Do you need to back off some? I think I'm going to explore that seal variation. And what's nice about this bolster or set of blankets, it kind of supports your lower belly. You can let the legs relax. So we're almost out of it now, but if this is not for you, we've got about a minute left, or the next pose is not for you, you could flip this, come to your back like bridge, support your bridge, and stretch your front body that way. So always feel free to flip it. Five breaths left. Okay, so we want to rest. What does that look like for you? I'm just going to forward fold, leave myself where I am, and just let it go. So take a few moments. It's nice if you can lie down on your belly if you're in Sphinx, but just take a moment to pause. And then you can bring your hands by your sides. Press yourself up. And then I'm just going to keep this same setup. So for me, I've got the bolster. I'm just going to scooch back a little bit so I can use more of my mat. So I like to have a blanket for my knee. I'm going to use this bolster because it's there, and why not? And then I'm going to grab my 2 blocks. Okay, so we're going to move into a lunge, a low lunge. And so I'm going to bring my right leg forward. And what I really like about having this bolster is right now my knee is on the bolster. It's not super comfortable. And I don't necessarily have knee stuff. It just doesn't feel great. So I'm going to lean forward. I'm going to lift up, scooch myself forward. Now I'm a little bit more on the bolster. My knee is not necessarily hovering, but it's not completely dropping down to that blanket and the ground. And then I have my blocks here for support. Now, if you don't have these props, that's fine. You're just finding a dragon lunge. All right, 3 minutes. So again, we'll see how that starts to feel as we move into the lower body, but we're sticking with our time. I may have shifted forward here, but I actually find I can put my block on my bolster, and then I can really let it go. And so the experience, the target area is the front of the back thigh, so getting into the hip flexor, moving into the anterior spine. You'll feel it a little bit in the lower back as long as that's okay for you. And if this is not okay, turn it over like a bridge, support yourself with that bolster or block, and you can do it that way. So hands can be on the blocks, on the thigh. I even find at this point, sometimes I like to reach the arms up or grab elbows just to continue the side body length. And I'm holding my elbows, sort of resting the back of my head against my forearms, and just gently tipping back in a way that feels good for me. So nothing forced, but it's just helping me to get into that front body. And we're about a minute in, 2 minutes left. You can be real conscious if you have low back concerns, you don't want to take yourself deeper into those low back bends. And so as much as I like this on my left side, I feel it a little bit in my lower back. So I'm going to do what I asked you to do, and I'm going to back out just a little bit because I feel for the next 90 seconds this feels a little safer for me. A minute left. And here I naturally start moving into my breath. It helps me relax. And take a little bit of gravity into the pose, sinking into the hips. All right, last couple breaths. And when the timer goes off, I'm going to stay on this leg. If you had flipped it to your back, we're going to stay with the 3-minute time. So you can do side 2 if you're on your back, or I'm going to move into pigeon pose here. So you can either do pigeon or thread the needle. So I'm going to leave the bolster because it's there, and I like to sort of just keep stuff where they are. So what I've done is I'm not shifting so far back that my front knee is lifted. I'm actually shifting way far forward. So instead of supporting necessarily the front hip cheek, which I am, then I'm thinking more about this back leg. So find your way into pigeon or thread the needle, or if it makes sense just to do side 2 if you're on your back with the back bend, that's fine. So we're going to stay with the 3 minutes. And I may or may not remove this bolster, but it feels pretty comfortable, so I have a feeling I'll just keep it. What I may do is lower my front body down. If you have knee sensitivity, hamstring concerns, then you can take thread the needle, which looks like a figure 4 on your back, crossing ankle over knee. About a minute in. About 3 minutes. And this is really about the hamstrings here. As we approach our final minute, if you are in pigeon and you'd like to sort of bring it up higher, you can do the same thing we did, sort of lifting the chest like you might have done in seal. Or you may feel like reaching for the back ankle. And if you're on this bolster, it's actually kind of nice. It makes it a little easier to bend the knee. There's no pressure on that back knee of resting on the prop, on the ground rather. And you can stay or bind, working into that side body length. So choose one of those options or just stay right where you are. We have about 50 seconds left. 5 breaths. All right, so we're finding a rebound first. So I'm tempted to go to down dog, but actually I think for me personally, I'm gonna be much more comfortable leaning right and sweeping the back leg around and just letting myself sit for a moment. So maybe you're in down dog. Child's pose might be a little bit too extreme, or knees to the chest might be a little too extreme. Just take a moment to really feel the effects of your poses. Okay, we'll do that on side 2. So let's go ahead and find our way back into our lunge. So right knee back. Grab your props. Again, kneecap not necessarily on the blanket. I'm going to shift slightly forward so that it's a bit more hovering. Timer is going. And for me, I get kind of tired in my upper body holding myself here. So depending on what your setup is like, I've really been liking the prop on top of the bolster. And then I can just sort of sit here. It's a bit more comfortable. And then gravity takes over. Again, you can stay as you are, you can tip it back, or maybe you're in that bridge version. I'm feeling okay to be here in this sort of upper back bend. But because I came out early on side 1, I'm going to do the same thing here just to have a little bit of consistency. We have 90 seconds left. Really, we're looking to experience, if you're feeling it somewhere else, that's fine, but we're stretching the front, the ligaments on the front of the spine. And if we could remove the abdominals, we could take out all of our intestines, and we could go all the way back to the spine from this direction, we would also access that hip flexor, that psoas, and that's part of what you might be stretching on that back leg. About 5 breaths left. Okay, so what was your pose? Are you going to pigeon, thread the needle? What is your second side? Now, even though it's nice to be consistent, do the same thing on both sides, that may not be available in your body. Maybe on this side you have a knee injury or hamstring tear, and so it wouldn't make sense to go this deep. Maybe you end up and thread the needle. And see if you can really listen within. You're becoming your own teacher. You're your best teacher. I once had a student that it was an arm balance. It was pigeon, but it was a flying pigeon. And he did the first side, and it was really great. And he did the second side, and it didn't feel quite great. And he told me later that in his head, he thought, he remembered me saying, it was sort of his own thoughts, but sides can be different. Don't push if it doesn't feel good, all of these things. And then he let his ego take over, and he said, no, I'm going to do it anyway. And he ended up blowing out his knee. So the moral of that story is you are your own best teacher. We just sometimes override ourselves. We know sort of when we think something is working or not. So whatever is happening within, listen to it. If it's telling you to make changes, please do. And sometimes the change you need might be legs up the wall. It could be taking child's pose or resting. So it doesn't have to be the same pose either. And teaching public classes and people back out of their poses earlier, they kind of do their own thing, which I love. Oftentimes people will kind of go to what I would have done next, which I sequence in a very particular way, but they don't know that. They're just doing what feels natural in their body. They're listening within. Okay, so we're on our last minute or so. If you did a variation, like adding the upper body, go for that. Let's see how this side is different for your last minute. And this is our last sort of back bend of this experience, if you're choosing to do that. Five breaths. Okay, so do what you did on side one. I'm going to lean over to the left, sweep the back leg around. I'm just going to sit for a moment. So things that might feel good, so after my whole little talk of do it feels good, but things that might feel good like child's pose or really deep forward fold, we don't want to quite go there yet. Give your body a moment just to sort of accept that movement that we just did. And then I'm actually going to keep my props as they are. I'm going to unfold this blanket just because I think it'll feel nice on my feet. And I'm going to sit on the back side of this bolster. So all I've done is sit on the ground, soles of the feet together into butterfly. It's a wide butterfly. So I'm just using this bolster to help facilitate the shape, but you can absolutely just bring soles of the feet together, move them away from you, and have it be the same experience. So again, I just like to be tidy with my props. So I'm here in a wide butterfly. This may be more than enough, but we're continuing on with the spine. And why not? 3 has been our number, so I change it. I'll do our number 3 here. You can sit up tall, but now we're really stretching through the whole spine. And so just start to melt over. If you feel any low back concerns, And you can back out of this pose. You might take legs up the wall instead. And I'm just adding something for my forehead so that I can release. Arms are up to you. You can be in front of the legs. If you don't have the bolster, they can go underneath the legs. I like this version of the wide butterfly better than, not better, but in this case better than when I have the legs all the way close to the groin, which is fine. That just stretches more inner thighs. And this is really targeting the lower back. So we did all of those back bends. Now we're just gently creating space in the tissues of the lower back. Halfway through, and I'm actually feeling like I want to remove my prop and see how that feels different. About 6 more breaths. All right, so bring yourself up. Now we can finally do that deep forward fold we've been looking for. So if you want, you can stay as you are and just gently forward fold as is, maybe even a prop underneath the knees. If you want somewhere that's more restorative, or you just want to give the low back a little TLC, you can take legs up the wall. I'm actually going to take dangling pose. And so it's just how it sounds. You're sort of standing in a forward fold. I'm not going to do 3 minutes, especially being in the forward fold. That may be a bit much. So but let's just pull it back to 2 minutes. We're nearly done with our physical postures. And so if you're in dangling pose, you can stand or you can put your hips against the wall. I like to grab elbows. It's that same sort of work. You can keep the knees a little soft so it's not so extreme on the hamstrings. But this might feel really nice on the spine. A little traction here after all the work you've done. If you're clasping elbows, go ahead and switch the clasp. This pose really illustrates how that gravity can take over. Maybe a seated forward fold is really challenging on the lower back, so the standing forward fold may be a little bit more successful for you. Breathe into those back ribs. So completing our circle here in the ribs. The breath body animating the pose. Okay, especially if you are in dangling pose, be mindful coming down. Take a moment here, and we're just going to finish with a nice gentle twist. I'm going to grab my strap. You can do any twist you'd like, but I think a straight leg twist after our practice should feel really nice. So I'm just going to take my strap once I get onto my back over the right leg. I'm going to take it over to the left. I can even use the wall since it's close enough. I'm just going to count the breath, about 10 breaths. Bring yourself to center. Reach for your left leg. We'll do that on side two. So sort of finishing out our practice here. Crossing the leg over. About 10 breaths, give or take. Just enjoying a nice pop in the lower back and a nice twist. Bring yourself to center. And take any finishing move. If you want a happy baby or whatever you'd like, go for it. I'm going to set myself up for Shavasana because I have all of these props. I'm going to use them. So set up however you'd like. But I'm going to take my, let's see how high I want to do. I'm going to do my blocks either on their side or tall. And then I'm going to put my bolster on top of that so it creates a little lift. I'm actually going to go as high as I can. We'll see if that's okay for me. This is really nice for the lower back. If you don't have a bolster, a couple of blocks, a couple of blankets, a little elevation is nice. Maybe legs up the wall if you haven't had that experience yet. And you can even place a blanket if you have one left over your belly. I'll do the timer one last time just so that we can fully rest in Shavasana. We know that I haven't forgotten about us. We're going to go back to our lucky number 3. 3 minutes Shavasana. So if you have those eye pillows, maybe set yourself up with your eye pillow. Do what you need to get comfortable. Again, if you have any low back sensitivity, this is so nice to have a little lift. You might just be placing your calves on your couch or chair nearby. Anything is fine. The eyes soften, the jaw relax. And just settle. Feel the true experience of your practice. to draw your attention back. Move fingers and toes. Inhale the arms overhead, maybe yawn. Bend the knees if they weren't already. You can roll to your side. Take a moment to pause. And then eyes closed or partially closed. Press yourself upright to seated. Draw your hands to your heart in gratitude for all the work your body has done. Lift your heart, bow your head. Namaste.